So we already discussed that in some situations, we may interpret some of our expenditures as the investments or capital expenditures to build, to generate some components of intellectual capital. Now a little bit more technical details how to compute economic value added within this conception by Stern Stewart Consultancy. So if we already analyzed these equity equivalents, and in the next steps I will show you how we are going to do it. So then it means that we found additional asset base for the company. So those equity equivalents or homemade assets, capitalized expenses, they should be added to the book value of the equity. And what is book value of the equity on the balance sheet according to the financial reporting standards? You will see here the total amount of the par values of the equity shares already issued and still outstanding in the market. You will also see the retained earnings that has been accumulated in the company and then used for financing its investment projects. So then you will add the sum of equity equivalents, and then you will add your long-term liabilities and your short-term liabilities if they are interest-bearing liabilities by their book values. And that means that you found new capital employed, which is now adjusted to the additional equity the company has, because the liabilities of the company, they are fixed, they are contractual, they are derived from your contracts with the bankers or with the bondholders, so on and so forth. So all the new homemade assets that you will find when capitalizing your strategic expenses, they will be added to the equity capital in that situation. You may do it, and you will do it, and it's advised to do it every year. So the equity equivalents, let's say in the past year, they were that particular amount. In this current year that you are summarizing now, you maybe change the intensity of your training programs for your personnel, of your market building expenditures. You may increase them both, or you may increase, let's say, market expenditures, but stop investing this year into your personnel. So there would be really different combinations. From that follows that within this year, your new homemade assets, which represent the sum of equity equivalents, or say it in other words, capitalized expenses by your hands, they are some different amount. So that's why you need to find the change in equity equivalents. And the change in equity equivalents should be added to your accounting result in profits, to earnings before interest, but after tax. If you do it, then you will arrive to your adjusted net operating profit after tax. Without equity equivalents, on the asset side, on the capital side, you will still have the same capital employed as it's shown in your financial report. If you are not keen on these adjustments for equity equivalents, but the whole conception of EVA by Stern Stewart requires that you must think deeper and you must identify some of your strategic expenses and capitalize them and increase your asset base by these homemade assets and then change the computation of your profit, because when you are capitalizing your expenses, your treatment of those expenses dramatically changes. You no more think about them like regular expense that should be subtracted when computing your profits, subtracted from your sales revenue. Capitalization of the expenses, on the contrary, means you do not think these are regular expenses within 1 year which do not bring you benefits beyond that 1 year. You finally do think they provide you the benefit stream after or beyond 1 year. That's why those are now treated as being an investment, making some long-term asset. So the cost structure or expense structure should be changed. I will show you in few steps. So you see at the title of that slide that this is so-called financing approach, how we're going to use the equity equivalence when computing economic profit, EVA conception. So we will adjust capital employed by adding equity equivalence for that particular year, and we will adjust net operating profit after tax by adding the change in equity equivalence, or the difference between current year equity equivalence and last year equity equivalence. I would like to remind you that change also can be negative, because for the current year, maybe you will get a lower amount of strategic expenses capitalized to the asset side of the balance sheet. Then that you will formally subtract them, this change in equity equivalence. If it's negative, it will mean that you are subtracting from your profits. Whatever you are doing, adding or subtracting with the equity equivalence, the change between the years, you are adjusting net operating profit after tax. And your capital employed is already adjusted because you add back those capitalized expenditures, and you recognize now that your equity is bigger and your asset base is bigger. And that's why your capital charge also increases, because now your capital employed is bigger, is larger, and you are multiplying it by your weighted average cost of capital. So the EVA as a conception by this particular company requires lots of different adjustments. We may discuss them in details in our project seminars. So equity equivalence would be used for the purpose of capital employed adjustments. We already discussed them. Look how it should look like when rewriting your liability and capital side of the balance sheet. And it looks like this way when you are computing your net income for the purpose of EVA calculations. You will start with the net income after tax available for the common shareholders. You will add the change in equity equivalence, and then you will arrive at your adjusted net income for common shareholders. You will add back dividends for preferred shares, because you are looking through the lens of voting shareholders on value creation perspectives, because they are voting. They have some power to implement particular decisions, to support some decisions of management team, or just be against those decisions for the management team. And you will also add back your interest expense after tax, or in case of capitalized operating lease, there would appear also so-called implied interest expense on the operating lease.